Hello and welcome to the Wheel of Crime podcast, the podcast that's ran by two ladies who play games, mumble profanities, and laugh way too often. Also, this podcast does cover topics of sensitive nature, and as such, listener discretion is advised. Hello and welcome to the Wheel of Crime podcast. My name is Emily. And today there is no Jen. I just about introduced myself as Jen. That's super funny. But yes, this is our first podcast episode of the year. Hooray! We are all back from holidays and life is good again. So I'm just trying to think here how to introduce this. So, well, to start, obviously, I'm the only person here. Jen had, how do I even say this? Basically, she's not able to return right now for our expected coming back special episode day because her life blew up basically overnight. And we're doing this episode here, or I am, because obviously we want to make sure that everybody knows that, we're still coming back and life is good. But we're going to have to take another couple week break after this episode featuring just me. Because she will not have access to her recording studio for at least another couple weeks. So you can expect us both to return for our regular programming on February 10th. We'll be doing it this way and taking the break instead of just having me featured for the next couple weeks. Because in this way, it's kind of weird not having Jen here to react to my stories and all that in real time. And I know that's a lot kind of why we're all here together. But I don't want to leave you guys, looking for something to listen to and not have anything. So I'm going to be sharing just a story today with you guys. And I'm going to see if I can kind of picture in my head on what Jen's reactions would be for questions and whatnot. So that's fun. To start with, how was the holidays? Because we took our holiday break. For me, honestly, nothing too crazy happened. I did have like a meltdown with a certain food app, which I actually just told Jen about recently, but I'll share with you guys now because the whole thing was super funny and all. And then, yeah, I feel like Christmas, though, in general was pretty good. But basically, literally the 23rd of December, I thought I would treat myself to ordering food from a delivery app, which I will not mention in case that's a problem. And basically, I ordered Subway, and I ordered like a lot of Subway because I was like, you know what? Treat yourself, treat the husband. I'm gonna order myself a foot long and him a foot long, and it's gonna be great. And then he had to bring it to me because I've been working from home still. And we have since then moved from our old place into the new place, which is away from the city. So he brings the Subway home after I ordered it literally hours before. And I like open the bag and it's a not 2 foot longs. It is a 3-inch raw sub with like lettuce and like I think mayonnaise and like literally nothing else on it. Like no drinks, no snacks, nothing, just this bag with this like weird, ridiculous looking half of a sub. And so like he thought I hadn't eaten during the day, and of course like when you haven't eaten and like you've been busy doing things all day and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna eat the sub. I had a meltdown, like tears rolling down my face, and he thought that he did something wrong, so he was like panicking. He's like, did I leave like a bag? I'm sorry. Like blah 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 blah. And I like couldn't really vocalize what I was feeling in that moment because it was like, it wasn't even just that I didn't receive it, because that's like one thing entirely, but it was what I got and I just couldn't believe it. So then I'm like, okay, well, obviously I'm going to get a refund for this because what on earth am I looking at? And then this app, when I tried to contact their support, they're like, oh, you ordered this like X amount of hours ago, like your time that you have to request a refund is like over. And I was like, I don't friggin' think so. So I open up the chat menu because they have those things where like, they're like, oh, we'll chat with like one of our, support people and, about your order. And I was like, I will be doing that Yes, please. So I was like the 71st person in queue, and I was like, oh my God. And then finally, after I've been sitting there staring at my phone because I'm like, I do not want to miss this conversation. And my husband, in the meantime, is thinking I'm like a complete lunatic because I have not explained to him what's going on yet. And finally, I get into the chat room, and I'm like in a completely mentally different state of existence at this point, okay? I'm like hungry and panicked and like a little bit angry. And so this person comes on to help me, and like, bless their heart, they're doing like as best as they can to understand like what my issue is, because I was basically trying to say that I didn't get my order, and they're like, but it's marked at received, and I was like, I know, but like what I received is literally not what I ordered, and all these other things. And I'm like, so then Andrew's like, well, what is going on? Like, you haven't even told me what the issue is. And I like, the person who's helping me name is Suckmeat, Sukmeet. And I look at Andrew and I'm like, I can't get my refund and I don't have my sandwich and Suckmeat's taking so long to help me. And he looks at me and he's like, that's not a nice thing to call somebody. Why would you say that? And I'm like, I'm not being, I'm not being mean. His name is literally Suck Me, and just had like a complete meltdown. And like, I'm obviously better about it now, and it's literally happened like weeks ago. But I still keep thinking about it, and I'm like, as unfortunate as names go, like during the English translation, when you're looking at different people's names, like that's pretty rough. But I did eventually get my refund, and he was super awesome. And other than that, like everything was fine. But yeah, no. So that was my super fun pre-Christmas experience, and then the actual day of Christmas went good. It's always kind of weird, like being in your late 20s, and like I'm the first person in my family who's kind of going into their late 20s and like celebrating Christmas. So that's one thing. But I mean, overall, like pretty much what you expect. You know, you see family and you have food and all this other stuff, and that's good fun. And then for New Year's, I went and saw Jen, and we celebrated New Year's, and we celebrated her birthday, and yeah, I think that went all good and fine. I'm not really sure what Jen would share about her Christmas life experience. I feel like there probably wasn't anything too crazy either. Otherwise, I would have heard about it. Or maybe not. Who knows? And then yeah, just like New Year's went normal, and then the only crazy thing would be the reason why she can't record, which I am purposely not sharing because I know the minute she gets on the show, she's gonna want to say exactly what happened because it is bonkers. But she absolutely cannot access her studio, and it has nothing to do with anything that she did. It's a external issue. So that will be that. And yeah, I guess that's like it for my fun little recap there. What else did I do? Oh, Jen and I went thrifting, and I found a Bic pickle vest, which I'm gonna make that my personality all this year. So that's also another thing. And yeah, I mean, other than that, I'm back to work. Jen's back to work. The usual. Meh, is what it is. And yeah, so I have my story today, which nobody knows about. It's a mystery for everyone. And yeah, I guess this would be the point where we spin the wheel of questions. So I will get right to it. Would you ever visit Paris? For myself, I haven't been, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I would visit Paris necessarily. I would go like to France and visit other places in France, but it's never been like a big desire of mine to see the Eiffel Tower, and I have heard from a lot of people that I know who made that a part of their Europe trip that it's fine for like a couple of days, but in general, you know, it's not like super touristy friendly, and it's a little bit dirty, which I mean, feel since I wasn't going to go in the first place, that kind of just adds to my decision, I guess. I don't know. Like, if I was given the opportunity, sure, why not? But, like, it's not, like, on my bucket list, per se. And then, as for Jen, I know she's been to Paris. I'm not entirely sure, like, what her, like, summary of the experience would be, since it was, like, I think she would have went when we were in, as a grad present in high school, because her and her mom traveled Europe and they went to a couple places. So I think that was one of the places. And yeah, That's really, oh my god. Wait, are the catacombs in Paris? I would see the catacombs. That would be a really cool experience, but I'm like a little bit macabre. So that that would be one thing. And then wine, if they have it there, which is a probably. Wine and death. Those would be my two things that I would like about Paris. Um, yeah, I mean, that's all I got. On to the next question. What do you think of sudden disappearances? So, what would Jen say? Jen would say that she finds them interesting, but that they are probably most likely tied to like some form of crime rather than it being anything like weird and spooky, like an alien encounter or something, which is something she might say. I don't know, but I can picture her voice in my head saying something along those lines. Whereas for me, what do I think of sudden disappearances? I think that it makes them interesting is usually the what leads up to them disappearing, not necessarily the disappearance itself, because I would be on the same page as her with saying like, it's probably more often than not tied to some sort of crime related thing that maybe, is just its own thing entirely. But I don't know. I was reading something really interesting a while ago that did talk about how a lot of disappearances, depending on where in the world, can sometimes lead to, say, for example, in the States, there's like a big mining or like lots of different mines that have been like filled in or operations that have been abandoned across the states, and the actual mine shafts themselves are pretty close to the surface, so people sometimes fall in these shafts, and that can lead to disappearances. So that's like one thing. And then I don't know, like as for like say like other like really interesting one like plane disappearances and other things, like those are the types of things that I get fascinated with where I'm like, how does a huge metal sky bus with many people on it go missing? I do not know. It's a mystery. And yeah, I don't know. That's like my opinion on it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I would add. Not really. It's fascinating in its own way. Like I said, the leading up to it is kind of fascinating, but also spooky, which I do like. All right, let's spin for the next question. What would you do if you experienced something that nobody else remembers? Now, I know what Jenny would say, because I'm pretty sure I've asked some variation of this question in the past with one of my stories. I am pretty sure that she would assume that she had like a hallucination and take herself to the doctor, or just like assume that she was mistaken, because she'd be like, how is it that I remember something that nobody else remembers? That would be my bet on what she would have to say if I end up being completely wrong about any of these questions. I know she's going to school me on it when we're both on the show next. But that would be my assumption. What would I do though? If I experience it nobody else remembers. I feel like for me, I would probably document it somewhere and be like, no, like this is exactly what I remember, just in case. Cause like it would be very weird for me to like have a whole experience about something that nobody remembers, but like at the same time, like an experience is so much different than say like a random like thing, like what's it called? It's like I think people call this like a glitch of the Matrix thing. It might be called something else. Oh, the Mandela effect, that's what it is where it's like Bernstein versus Bernstein bears and like other types of things. Like I feel like that's a different thing where like it's like such a small little like blip thing where it could be really easy to maybe not necessarily remember the entirety of something. But like that's a little different than an experience. So like I don't really know. Yeah, that's probably what I would do. I'm not really entirely sure. I would probably also, to some degree, assume that I had like some kind of hallucination, or be like, I obviously have not drank enough water for the last week, or I need to go to bed, effective right this minute, or something along those lines. I guess it also depends on what exactly it would be, but that seems like a whole other thing. And with that, let's go to our next question. All right. This is the last one. What's your scariest hotel room experience? Now, I'm pretty sure I know what Jen's is, and I don't remember all the details of this story because it would have been when her and John were using a certain app for booking. rooms in other places, which I will not say, that are usually in people's homes. I'm trying to like mind my P's and Q's just in case. But I know for a fact mine, well, maybe hers would also be the one where her and I were in Europe and we were staying in Prague, in this man's room that he was renting out, where there was like a mattress stapled to the door and a window in the bathroom that led into like a vent for the building. Might be her other one. I don't really know. So like there's options at least. But for me, I know mine for a fact is that my husband and I were traveling just like by car through the States. I can't remember the name of the highway. I know it's like fairly popular for like state road trips. But we were driving for work and we drove from like Vancouver to Los Angeles along the coast there. And there was one of our stops, and we stopped in Crescent City because it was literally like midnight. And we were looking for a place to stay, and it already had a bad start because Andrew was just like slow rolling past like the available hotels to see which ones had like vacancy, and he got pulled over by the police, who number one thought that his license plate was fake because it said Alberta, Canada on it, and I don't know why this man would think it was fake. And number two, gave him a warning for suspicious behavior for driving too slow, which is still really funny for me. Andrew was just flabbergasted. He had no idea what to make of that experience. But anyways, so that was the start of the night. But we check into this one hotel, which I think was literally called the Crescent City Hotel. And for any listeners who are not sure where Crescent City is, it's literally like one of the most northern places when you get to California. I think it's like you just leave the Redwood Forest and then it's right there. And it's just like a little town like right up by the coastline. But anyways, we check into this place. They only had one room available, and it was on the fourth floor, and we check in, and like at this point, we're like way too tired to be concerned about anything. And I say that because I'm going to give some red flags here in a hot minute. The first thing is that I am like nearly 100% sure this place is haunted, okay? Number one. Namely, because I kept hearing like footsteps and voices and the sounds of like chinking glasses in the hallway when like legitimately everybody was asleep because it was the middle of the night. Who knows, I guess, but that would be my main theory, because that is really weird. Number two being that when we checked in, it was very odd because the front desk asked if we had any pets and we said no, and she was like, oh good, because this isn't a pet-friendly hotel. So we check into this room and there's literally white hair, I'm assuming dog hair, but it's short hair all over the room, like the couch, the top duvet cover. Like at this point I'm like, I feel like this room has not been cleaned maybe ever. Like not sure, can't say for certain. So that was like red flag number two. And then red flag number three for me, which I did not tell Andrew about until we were literally like hauling ass out of there the next morning, was when so he would have been in the bathroom, but when I pulled the blanket cover down, I accidentally yanked the fitted sheet with it, and in the middle of the bed was this giant, what looked like a grease stain. It was just like shaped like a long oval, and like it also smelled kind of funky, and I was like, I don't vibe with this. But I put the fitted sheet back on, and I was like, you know what? Not my problem. I don't want to think about this because I'm pretty sure I know what's going on, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute. Basically, I remake the bed. Andrew comes out and he's like, oh, okay, time for bed. And I'm literally sleeping on top of all the sheets because I was like, this man has been driving for quite literally 13 hours. He deserves a restful sleep. So I'm going to tell him nothing and pretend like I don't know anything. And I'm going to sleep on top of the covers because I already know too much. And so that was how the night went. But I was looking it up the next morning, and literally what happens when you die, all of like the oils and the fats in your skin leak out of your body. Gross, I'm sorry, I know. And will stain fabrics and surfaces. So somebody died on that bed. The staff there was like, okay, cool, let's change the sheets and call it a day. And that's how that went. So we like left, and I was like, cool. That was a horrible experience. Never coming back. And then, funny enough, I think I actually drove through there twice on 2 different trips, but we did not stay in the same place the second time. But yeah, so That was fun. Yeah, like I said, traumatizing. And then, funny enough, I actually talked to some like other people who've done that road trip, and every single one of them was like, "Ooh, you stayed there? Yikes!" And I was like, "Ooh, okay." So we're all on the same page. Cool. And yeah, so that would have been my scariest hotel room experience because what the fuck was that in three different layers, and also probably one of the worst sleeps I've ever had in my entire life because of all the people partying in the hallway apparently in a small town at 3 in the morning while I'm trying to sleep, or a ghost partying at 3 in the morning in a small town while I'm trying to sleep. Either way, very rude. And yeah, that basically wraps up all of our questions. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. So what is my story for you today? There is no way in a million years Jen would be able to guess this story because I'm going to be going ahead this year with some untold stories that maybe not a lot of people have heard of. So I'm kind of starting out with this one just to like be a little bit fun and fancy free. So this story is called, this is the description by the way, because I have to. The Vanishing Hotel Room, also known as the Vanishing Lady, is a story which claims that during an international exposition in Paris, a daughter left her mother in a hotel room, and when she came back, her mother was gone, and the hotel staff claimed to have no knowledge of the missing women. So this story, like I said, is called either The Vanishing Hotel Room or The Vanishing Lady. And there's so many different iterations of this story because when I'm trying to look up some of these ones that like either don't have a lot of information or are clearly like not talked about often enough that there's like a solid continuation of the story, I like to see what brings all of them together in a way that makes the most sense. So I have a story here that was published by an author named Narendran C. And it was on a website called Horror, and then it had like another subname, but that was like the main name of it. And this is kind of what they put together from all of the different sources. They basically sourced the same things that I saw and was trying to source together. So this credit is for you. I'll just say your name again, Narendran C. And we'll go ahead and I'll tell you guys about what the story is really all about. So it is one of the oldest urban legends told regarding travel. There is also evidence that this story became well known at the end of the 19th century. This urban legend started to get famous in the 20th century. A mother and daughter travel from Great Britain to Paris, which is located in France. All of a sudden, the mother of the daughter gets really sick. So the daughter books a room in the nearby hotel, which would then help her mother to get some rest. Then, with the help of the hotel management, she arranged for a doctor to look over her mother. After looking at the mother's condition, the doctor suggested some medicine to the mother, and later that evening, she went out of the hotel to buy the medicines prescribed by the doctor. While going out, she asked the hotel management to take care of her mother while she was out. She didn't know any French, so it took a long time for her to buy these medicines that had been prescribed by the doctor that was looking after her mother. When she came back, she had many surprises waiting for her. One of them is that it had totally changed. It felt like she was entering a completely different hotel when she walked past the entrance. Then she went to the room where her mother was, and that room was totally different. Her mother also was not there. She looked in every corner of the room for her mother, and then when she started asking about the events with the hotel management, the management didn't recognize her. They even checked the register, but the register said that room was empty. She even tried contacting the doctor who had been treating her mother, but the doctor said that he didn't remember treating anybody in that place. She even showed the prescription from the doctor, and he denied that too, saying that he didn't write it. Every situation around her started to panic. The disappearance of her mother, the change of the hotel, the denial from the doctor regarding the treatment, and the whole situation was just making her panic as well. But she started to notice that there was something not right, so she went down to the British Embassy in Paris to check the details of their arrival. But to her surprise, there was no record of her mother and herself traveling from Britain to Paris. The embassy officer started thinking whether she was from Britain or else she was lying. After hearing this, she starts to panic even more. And after calming down, she then explains everything to the officer at the embassy, but the people at the embassy were not ready to hear her story. She tried her best to explain her position, but that didn't work out very well. And the officer at the embassy called the French police and reported her, and then the police officer took her to the police station. When they started questioning her, she kept saying the same incident over and over. The police investigating the case, but they couldn't find anything to corroborate her story, so then they thought she must be like mentally unsound or not, or misremembering or something else, so they transferred her to a mental asylum. Before even realizing her situation, she was then put into this mental asylum. Even there, she tried to explain her situation to the people who did speak English there, and the people in the asylum had also tried to solve this case but could not find anything. She then went into depression in the following years at the asylum because of her sadness and fear, and eventually ended up passing away in this institution. Till her death, nobody else knew of what happened or who she was except for herself. The author then states that there are many variations of this urban legend. The one that was just spoken of is one of the most famous versions. In another variation, it says a brother and a sister who came to Paris for a world exhibition. And in another variation, it also says that she became mentally unstable after years and then returned to Britain. But nobody at the end of the story ever knows what happened to her mother. So that is the story. And yeah, just thinking about, like, you know, that whole story, like, it's interesting because it's kind of like what I was saying earlier when I said the question, like, if you remember something that nobody else does. Like, the additionally weird thing for me would be, like, if your whole environment corroborates something different. Because then at the end, too, it's like, well, literally, where did your mother even go? And then, after all those years and your mother doesn't even, like, try to look for you, or nobody tries to look for you, it's like, it does make you wonder exactly what's going on. But I'll go into kind of like some of the more like grittier things since we have the time for it today. So to start with, I'll go over the origin of kind of where this story even came from. So according to the Quote Investigator website and Bonnie Taylor Blake, the author of the earliest known instance of this legend was Nancy Vincent McClelland, who wrote a version of it in the article titled A Mystery of the Paris Exposition in the Philadelphia Inquirer, dated November 14th, 1897. And in this version, at the end, the daughter is told the truth by a French policeman about her mother's death from the disease. The QI and Dr. Blake also found a version of the legend in the Detroit Free Press in 1898 titled Porch Tales, The Disappearance of Mrs. Neebe, which designated Kenneth Hereford as the author. It is theorized that Kenneth Hereford was a pen name for Carl Harriman, which is an entirely different thing. So, basically, when it first began, it was this one thing, and it's just kind of, like, evolved to being the story that I told you guys today. And now we'll go over some of the variations. So, there are multiple variations of the Vanishing Hotel Room story. Usually where the story is set is in Paris, France, during the Paris Exposition of 1889, or year 1900, where most commonly a woman and her daughter have just traveled. Sometimes the woman and the story aren't related. They're traveling companions of roughly the same age. On rare occasions, both the searcher and the one sought after are male. Usually the daughter gets sent to a mental hospital where she then spends the rest of her days. And in the version printed in July 6th and July 13th, 1929, in an issue of the New Yorker, it was revealed that the mother had died of Black Plague, and the hotel management and the police had kept her death a secret so that the visitors to the city would not leave at this time. So that kind of goes over some of the other common variations of this story, which is interesting as well to see, like I said, the evolution of how these work. And then lastly, we have some instances of where this story made its way into popular culture kind of more recent. So this story inspired several novels, such as The End of Her Honeymoon by Marie Belloc-Lodnez, 1913, She Who Was Helena Cass by Lawrence Rising, 1920, The Vanishing of Miss Fraser by Basil Thompson, 1925, and Torrents of Spring by Ernest Hemingway, 1926, as well as the following films: The Midnight Warning, 1932, The Lady Vanishes, 1938, Covered Tracks, 1938, So Long at the Fair, 1950, which I know a lot of people that might ring a bell for you. Into the Thin Air / The Lady Vanishes, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, 1955. The Forgotten, 2004. The Flight Plan, 2005. And it was also featured as a quote-unquote true story in a 2002 episode of the Fox television program Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction. So, with that, it brings us to the end of the story that I have to share with you today. So, what do we think? Fact or fiction? I think for myself, it could very well be true, and maybe the narrator of the story, the person that this happened to, may have just had memory problems and might not have remembered all the details, or even her mother might have been at a different hotel. But who's to say? I don't really know. It has inspired a lot of things since then, though, both like based in fact or fiction stories, and I do think that's very interesting, though. And like I said, I think the circumstances leading up to the disappearances of people have always been interesting, and in this case, it's one that I haven't actually really heard that often, where somebody disappears, but it's like they disappear, but also like their environment disappears, and apparently nobody knows who they are. That part I did find really interesting. And yeah, like I said, that brings us to the end. And I don't know what Jen's input would be, but hopefully something cool and fun and fancy like usual. But if you like today's story, you can leave us a review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast. 5 stars does help us with kind of trending and reaching out to more audience listeners, so it's greatly appreciated. We have a website, which is www.wheelofcrime.com. If you want to look at us on there and kind of see what we're all about, you can also email if you want to, which is wheelofcrime@gmail.com. You can reach out to us just to say anything you like, critique the show, or say something nice that's probably preferable. Or just let us know your thoughts or share something with us. So any and all communication is always appreciated, so we do love that. We also have a Patreon if you want to donate to the show, which is Wheel of Crime at Patreon. We have social media, we do, which is Wheel of Crime on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok if you want to find us all on there. Lastly, because our last episode that we would have shared with you guys would have been our listener episode 1 for Christmas, feel free to continue to use that Google Doc that we have up. It should be still in our bios to submit your stories there. We are open to doing this as a continuation thing just because we love being able to engage with you guys and all that. So if you want, you can do that. And our return date officially will be February 10th, both Jen and I, so you don't have to listen to just my voice for the next couple weeks here. And she will be right and ready to re-engage, and that will be super fun. So in the meantime, let's send good vibes her way, because she really needs them right now. And farewell for now. And it was lovely being able to do the show again. And hopefully it won't be too much longer until both of us can talk with you and to you guys again. So for now, have a awesome next couple weeks. Bye!